Hey everyone, this is Coach Phoenix.
And I'm Coach Gina.
And this is Toast with the Coaches. Cheers.
Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Perspective, the show where we drink and talk about life, the universe, and all that other jazz.
And again, I'm Coach Phoenix, founder and CEO of Role Model Life Coaching. At Role Model Life Coaching, we partner with our clients to navigate down the road of life towards their model self.
And I'm Coach Gina. I'm a certified life coach and owner of Clear Focus Coaching, where we specialize in boundaries coaching and women empowerment. To find out more, check out clearfocuscoaching.com.
Check her out. But at this time, I would like to raise a toast. At this time, I would like to raise a toast to an inspirational speaker, a mother of two, a domestic violence survivor, champion, and advocate. Breaking the silence against domestic violence, Savannah, Georgia's own Aimee Powell. Cheers.
Cheers. Welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Hey, Aimee, welcome. Thank you so much for your bravery and your courage and for joining us today and sharing your story with Gina and I and our audience. So welcome.
Definitely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So let's not waste any time and let's get right to it. So you're a survivor of domestic violence. But before we dive into that part of the story, can you please just set the stage for the audience and let us know exactly how, what happened in the beginning and how it turned from sugar to shit, I guess.
That's a nice way to put it. I actually met my abuser my sophomore year of high school. We went to the same high school. Met him in the hallway in the change of classes. I was a new kid at school. Had a crush on him all sophomore year, and it wasn't most of junior year too. Junior year, he was a football player and I was a cheerleader. So we saw each other a lot after practices and games and stuff like that. My senior year of high school, that August, so that was 2004, I finally got the courage to tell him. My parents had just split and I was staying in Charleston, South Carolina, Goose Creek, South Carolina, with my best friend trying to finish my senior year of high school because they had both left the area. So he and I, we talked, we flirted, all that fun stuff, but we didn't really ever date. I ended up having to move away in the middle of my senior year, moved to Alabama with some family. And about 2 months after I left, I got a phone call from an 843 number, and I didn't know who it was, but I knew it was somebody from home. So I picked up the phone, and it was him. He had gotten a cell phone and called me, and I talked to him every single day for the next, I don't even know how many years, morning and night, until I moved back home. I consider Goose Creek, Charleston area home. So I moved back in January of 2007.
Hold on. So between 2004 and 2007, y'all spoke every day. Did y'all maintain a long distance relationship, or was it just like a strong friendship and some lessons?
It was like, that teenage talking stage. Like we didn't actually officially start dating until January 1st of 2007. He asked me to be his girlfriend at midnight. We were on the phone. We weren't together. I moved home about 3 weeks later. And the first time,
or just
I wanted to be back home, but he was definitely a very large driving force in me wanting to be back home.
Yeah.
So I packed everything into my car that I could fit and moved back. Didn't have a job set up, just had a place to stay.
Throughout those years that you were talking back and forth, were you visiting at that time too, or was it just phone calls? Oh, okay.
So I left in the middle of my senior year. I had an amazing principal who knew my situation and allowed me to come back for prom and come back to actually graduate and walk with my class.
Wow.
So I did come back and forth and visit a lot. And I saw him, saw friends, whatever. I was working a lot during that time too. So I had my own money. I could go and come as I pleased. So I saved my money and I moved back home. I wanted to be home, and he was definitely obviously a driving force behind me wanting to be home. So I moved back the end of January of 2007, and the first weekend of April was the first time he put his hands on me.
So January 2007, and you experienced the first act of domestic violence.
The act of violence, yes. Domestic violence, when you say the first act of domestic violence, that wasn't the first act. It was the first physical act, but domestic violence encompasses a lot more than just the physical violence. So,
okay. So can you elaborate on that a little bit? What were some of the other experiences that you had?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't. So when I'm talking to women and they're like, oh, well, he's never hit me, so it's not domestic violence. No, he may have never hit you, but are you allowed to have access to your own money? Are you allowed to go and come as you please? Are you allowed to talk to who you want to on the phone? Are you allowed to wear what you want to wear? Are you allowed to go to church if you want to go to church? Does your
I feel like the word allow is very key in those questions. Like another person should not be permitting you to do something with your own body or with your own time.
Exactly. And so emotional abuse, financial abuse, spiritual abuse, sexual abuse, those are all components of domestic violence. So it's not just the act of somebody physically putting their hands on you. That's a violent behavior. Anything that makes you feel unsafe, even intimidation, even just punching the wall. They may not have punched you, but he punched the wall next to your head, or he broke a chair, or he did this. Those are all different forms of domestic violence that a lot of people don't consider domestic violence, because when you hear the word violence, you think somebody punching you or kicking you or hitting you with a stick or, something crazy. You don't think somebody controlling you. And at first it seems really cute. Oh, he wants to go everywhere with me. Oh, he wants to do everything with me. Oh, that's so sweet. No, it's not. After a while, it's not that sweet. It got to a point where if I didn't answer his phone call the instant he called me, even if I was talking to my dad, none of my family lived in the state. So, I would talk to them on the phone to keep in touch. Even if I was talking to my dad, if I didn't answer the phone right away, there was hell. There was emotional hell to pay.
So let's go back to that. So thank you for putting us on as to exactly what domestic violence means. Yeah. So you said you moved in January 2007, April 2007 was the first act of physical violence. When did it turn from sugar to shit? When did the domestic violence start after you moved back in January?
The physical stuff started.
No, domestic violence, period. Because it was like elevation, right? It went from other acts of violence to the physical.
So looking back on it, now having gone through extensive therapy and looking back on the situation, the acts of violence, the emotional control, the mental mind games, all of that started a long time before that. It started while we were talking. The whole, I'm going to talk to this girl if you don't talk to me. A lot of the cat and mouse games that tend to get played when you're dating in high school. If you don't give me attention, I'll get it from her. That kind of thing. That started a long time before we ever even started dating, because he knew I cared so much about him.
Yeah. What was your perspective on it at the time? Did you think it was just like normal high school relationship stuff?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I did. What I've learned is that a lot of teenagers are not taught about healthy love. It's, at least when I was in school, the primary focus was not getting pregnant. That was what we got talked to about. We got talked to about not getting pregnant. And if you did get pregnant, what were your options? We didn't get talked to about what healthy relationships looked like. That just wasn't part of my class. That wasn't part, and none of the adults in my life really talked to me about that either. And I'm not faulting them, because it wasn't something that was on their mind. It wasn't something that they had dealt with, so they weren't aware of it. I will say now, everybody's very much aware of it. And my sister is like one of the people leading like teen dating violence awareness stuff at her campus. She works at a university. So, I don't fault them. It just wasn't something that was talked about.
Yeah, that's fair. And to your point, I think there are a lot of adults too who don't even know what healthy relationships look like. So it's hard to impart into a child when you don't even know yourself.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So you said April 2007, the physical violence started. So can you walk us through like that first event?
So the first event that I can recall was actually a joint birthday party for him and our roommate, because he did live with us.
And how old were you at this time? I'm sorry.
19?
Okay.
19 years old. Or turning 19 that year.
Yeah,
Gosh,
that makes
that was
sense.
a
If you
while
were a
ago.
sophomore in 2014, that would make
I graduated in 2005. I turned 18 in 2005. So
Okay. Yep.
I was turning 20, I guess, that summer. I turned 20 that August. So I was 19 at the time. So I had worked late and I actually had gotten pulled over on my way home, trying to rush and get home. And I got home and I changed clothes. I changed into an outfit that he picked out, that he asked me to wear. It showed cleavage. It's what he had. I was like, it's your birthday party. I'll wear whatever you want to wear, whatever. Well, he had already been drinking, as had obviously everybody else that was there. Obviously, it was underage drinking. And he got mad because he thought that his best friend was checking me out based on what I had on. Keep in mind, he told me what to wear.
Yeah.
So he made me go put a hoodie on. So I went and put a hoodie on, but it just escalated. He had been drinking. There was a lot of people around in our little apartment. And the last thing I remember prior to like the next morning is there were three, and a lot of the people that were there had gone to high school with us and knew us, was the majority of the men that were at the party. So there was like 3 or 4 other guys there holding him back in the hallway as he tried to get down the hallway to assault me.
Oh, wow.
And trying to keep him out of our bedroom because he was so mad at me that he was going to put hands on me. He had already tried to put hands on me, and that's when they had gotten involved. So that was the first like big incident in front of people. Mm-hmm. There had been like little things before that. And from there, it kind of escalated to choking me until I passed out on numerous occasions. I have had my lip busted. I have had my hand cut open with meat scissors requiring stitches. I had tried to...
You said with meat scissors?
Mm-hmm. I had gotten them in an effort to defend myself, like to scare him off, and he turned them on me and cut my hand open right here. I needed like 7 or 8 stitches in my hand. He one point beat me until I couldn't walk, deliberately punching me in my lower back. I have spinal stenosis and bulging discs in my lumbar spine from a horse riding accident that had happened just prior to me moving back to South Carolina. So he knew about it because I got to wear one of those pretty little back braces for a couple months. Mm-hmm. And when it would flare up, I would have a lot of hard time walking. And so he got mad at me. We got into an argument and he started wailing on me, and I turned to cover my head and he just kept wailing on my back. I couldn't walk for 3 days afterwards.
First of all, I just want to say I'm so sorry that you have gone through this experience. And for all of the women too that have experienced what you've experienced, it's the number of people that have gone through it is unprecedented. And so it's
1 in 3.
heartbreaking.
1 in 3?
1 in 3 to 1 in 4 that we know about. But yes, on average, and that number is skewed because it doesn't take into account same-sex relationships.
Yeah.
Well, I also apologize for that, and I'm sorry as well.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you're here, that you are one of the ones that have survived, and that that you are now doing what you're doing, which we will get into a little bit later. But I want to ask, so after the first incident, second incident, third, fourth, fifth, I mean, the question I'm sure you're asked is, why did you stay with him?
Yeah.
So that is so in this context, totally I'm okay with it. But that is my biggest pet peeve that people ask victims, because it puts the blame on the victim and not on the perpetrator.
Thank you so much for saying that.
Hold on. So I'm gonna go ahead and play devil's advocate and play the man, right? How is it putting it on the victim if you asking like, why did
it's asking, why did you stay when he did? Because it basically implies that it's my fault that it happened because I didn't leave him. If you don't look at it as a whole, just because somebody put your hands on him, a lot of women, especially women that I'm dealing with now, are not in a financial situation to be able to leave, or they have children that they have to consider. And a lot of times when domestic violence victims leave, they may be physically safe, but they are re-victimized through the court system because our court system is not set up to take into account while you think it would, it doesn't. And I have many victims who have had their children taken from them by their narcissistic abusers because they play the court system, and they have more money, and they have more backing, and they have access to better attorneys, and they get blowed in court because they don't have the same resources, because they've been stay-at-home moms and they've been only taking care of their children, and they can't go up against the same things with the same power that their abuser can. So they have to take that into consideration, because had I had children with my abuser, I probably would have died at his hand, because I would never have left, because I would not have wanted to risk subjecting my children to that. I would rather have taken the brunt of his abuse than have my children take the brunt of his abuse. And I would have no control over if they were experiencing abuse or not, if they weren't in my care. If I left him and we had to share custody, then he would have been alone with them. And he may have done what he did to me, to my children, and I would never have lived with myself if that had happened.
Yeah, there are no good options. And oftentimes that's by design too, by the abuser, is to isolate and isolate and isolate, so that if that does come to it, you don't have options. Part of
their power and control wheel. It's one of the major ways that is isolating from family and friends. So I moved away from my friend, all of my family. I didn't have any family. Closest family was like 8 hours, 10-hour drive. And yes, I had my close friends, but so you asked why I stayed. And my grandmother is probably going to see this, and I hope she knows I love her anyways. And it's going to make me emotional to talk about it.
Being yourself is good.
But my grandmother, before I left to move home, told me that all a Black man wanted with a white woman was to beat her. And that was going to be my fate, that he was going to beat me and that I would be home within 6 months. And I refused to let her be right. I was determined to not be that statistic. And I felt like if I kept it to myself and I worked through it and I loved him hard enough, then it would stop and I would be able to prove her wrong. So that was a very, very large driving force to why I didn't leave him. We didn't have children together, thank God. But that was a huge driving force because I wanted to prove my grandmother wrong.
Yeah. Was she racist, your grandmother?
Oh, yes. Yes. I love her. I love her despite her ways. I have Black children, and she and I have had some very heated debates in the last year or so.
So she's still racist. So she haven't seen.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Damn.
Yeah.
Do you love your kids?
She's met my children.
Do she love them?
She says she does. And I think in her own way, she does. My grandmother's pushing 80. And at this point,
limitations.
I just have to love her for I have to love her for her good qualities and let her know that her bad qualities are not acceptable to me. Yeah. So I limit contact with her. She lives 10 hours away. So it's not like she's somebody I see all the time. But that was definitely a huge driving force as to why I stayed, was because I wanted to prove her wrong.
Yeah. And it kind of sounds like you said too, that with the abuser and having moved away from friends and stuff, it sounds like you didn't have a lot of support. I'd like to ask the question in a little bit of a different way, which is, what was your reaction after those situations happened? Did you reach out and ask for help? Did your friends notice? The people that were around you, did they notice?
So obviously my roommate noticed. We shared a wall. It was hard to miss. She was there the night that he tried to get at me down the hallway. It was her birthday party too. Mm-hmm. And, it was a cycle that we went through a lot. I actually ended up calling the police on him in July of that year. Okay. They came, they gave me the choice if I wanted to press charges or not, because there was no marks on me at that point. And so they didn't have to press charges unless I wanted to. I did choose to press charges, and I immediately regretted it. There's a vicious cycle when you're in the mental abuse and the emotional abuse that I felt safe. He was gone. but then, oh my God, I feel so bad. What, like, what if we were just about to make a breakthrough? What if things were just about to get better? And
Wow.
so in South Carolina, which is where all my abuse took place, there's something called pretrial intervention. If you've never been charged with anything, you can enter into this program to complete counseling, community service, pay a fine, and your record will be expunged. So he got charged, got into this program. He ended up moving back home. I picked him up from jail. Not my brightest moment, but it happened.
Was this? It was this still July?
Yeah, this was in July when he got arrested.
No, he got arrested, but when he got charged and moved back home, this is still July when he moved back home?
So no, he moved back in with me after the first charge. The second charge came at the end of September. My uncle had called to let me know that after a long bout of infertility, he and my aunt were going to be adopting a little baby girl. And he had called me, and 2 days prior to that, my abuser had choked me till I passed out. I had not spoken to him since he had done that. And I had actually called his mom and left her a message and said, if you don't get your son out of my apartment, he's going to end up in jail. She didn't call me back until I was on the phone with 911 after he had busted my lip open, punching me in the face while I was on the phone with my uncle, because he was mad that I was talking to my uncle and smiling and laughing and excited with my uncle, but I wouldn't talk to him. So I had one of those hot pink Motorola flip phones, that were all the rage. That slapped shut when he punched me. My uncle tried to call me back because he thought he lost signal. But I couldn't answer him because I was fighting to get out of my room. And I got into my roommate's room where her and her then boyfriend were, blood pouring out of my face. And I'm crying. I didn't know what to do. And I'm just like, Ashley, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
No, what did the dude do? What did Ashley's boyfriend do?
He went out of the room to try to talk to him, and calm him down. And my abuser actually fled when he realized that I was calling 911. He left our apartment and ran. To give you a little bit more of a backstory in regards to my abuser, he was involved in the police cadet program with our local police department and had been all throughout high school. He was about 6 months away from leaving for academy to become a police officer. Wow. So he was like a chief or something for the police cadet program. So he had been there for a while. So we had a bunch of gear like in my closet and stuff that he had from that. And, but we lived just outside the jurisdiction of the police department that he did that with. So they didn't know about his first arrest. Had they known, it probably would not have happened again. So he realized that I was calling 911 and he fled. We lived in the only apartment complex that at the time had a very 12-foot tall, solid wooden privacy fence with one way in and one way out. And his special self ran inwards and not outwards before the cops got there, and decided to hide in a friend's apartment. And his friend promptly snitched on him and told them where he was. So he was hit with a felony criminal domestic violence 2 and evading arrest for running from the police. When he was brought back to the apartment, he was trying to talk in 10 code and like, oh, I'm one of y'all, all this stuff. And they were like, oh, really? Okay, we'll fix you. And they called his supervising officer from the department that he was a cadet at. And she came over and ripped him a new one. And then promptly ripped me a new one for not letting her know, because she was like, I would have helped you. Like, you needed, you should have spoke up. I could have gone to jail that time because we were both in violation of a no contact order that had been issued after his first arrest. Luckily, the responding officer took pity on the fact that he was pretty confident I had learned my lesson, thanks to my busted lip. And he did not take me to jail, but it could have happened. So my ex was taken to jail. I went to his bond hearing the next day. I met his father in the parking lot of the jail for the first time. And, his dad said, oh, I didn't raise him like this, all that. I have my own theories, but I will keep those to myself. And so he moved back home. But unfortunately,
Went back.
I did not stop talking to him. I was a glutton for punishment, apparently. And I thought,
so stop there. What made you, after that time, go back after the
I
second?
loved him. I was young and dumb, and I loved him. And I thought that, okay, now he's going to get help. Now he got into this program. And so the program that he got into after the first arrest, he had literally completed the first week of that program when he got arrested again. Mm-hmm. And one of the qualifications for that program is you can't get arrested again while you're in it, or you are automatically kicked out and don't pass go. Well, I talked to the prosecutor because I was like, if he goes to jail, all he's going to be doing is sitting in jail and getting madder and madder, and he's not going to get help. And then you're going to have him back in jail once he finally gets out of jail, because he's going to do it again because he didn't learn anything.
So you helped him.
Yeah. So I would rather you put him in counseling and allow him to continue the counseling and maybe learn better skills than to put him in jail and him not get any better.
So can I ask, kind of throughout the story, what I'm hearing is that you have a lot of outpouring love for humans in general.
I do, unfortunately.
Unfortunately and fortunately, maybe just misplaced at the time. But I'm also hearing, that you have this compassion and also this forethought of saying, like, this is a human being who deserves compassion and kindness, and they deserve help. Was anybody there returning the favor for you? Was there any classes, any therapy, any resources that were given you to help you through your situation?
Or even offered?
Yeah.
No, not that I know of, not that was offered to me. I know there's a victims advocate that works with the court systems, and I think I might have talked to her once, but that was it. So there wasn't, it wasn't really, there was no help or anything offered to me. I think probably because with him in jail or with him back at home, I wasn't in danger anymore. So I wasn't referred to the shelter, which is where a lot of the resources end up coming into play. Although a lot of women don't realize that you don't usually have to be a resident at the shelter in order to qualify for the services that they offer. But I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know that was a thing that was even offered.
Yeah. No, and if someone's not offering it to you and bringing it to your attention, especially when you're in the thick of it and going through it, not only are you surviving this abuse, but it's like you have to be your own advocate too. That's a heavy load to carry.
And you got to understand, she was only 20, 21. So, at that age, people don't know shit.
No, we don't know anything. We think we do, but we don't know anything.
Yeah. The reality of it. So you help him get into counseling, and then what? You went back?
Yeah, so the prosecutor allowed him to stay enrolled in the program, and as long as he didn't get arrested again, then they would allow him his record would be expunged, all of that. So, like I said, we ended up still staying together. We were together until July of 2011.
Did he move back home?
He did. He moved back home, but
hold on, and y'all still had this no contact order.
Yeah. But he moved back home, and I ended up moving like 2 blocks from his house. So he could literally walk to my house. And his dad would be none the wiser, that he was coming over. So the abuse it wasn't as frequent, after that, but it did still happen. The emotional, the mental, the financial, all of that was still at play. I still got guilty.
But not the physical. The physical, he stopped.
No, the physical still happened. It just wasn't as often as it was prior to all of that. Prior to all of that, he was hitting me or choking me or, doing something at least a few times a week.
So did that kind of make you feel like it was getting better? Like give you hope? Like, oh, it's not as frequent, so it's getting better.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, you play into that. It's gonna get better. He's doing the counseling. He's doing this, but you don't ever think about the fact that if it's not their choice to do it, then it's not going to stick. So he was going through the cycle. He was going through the steps, but nothing was getting retained.
How I have a question, and again,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got to play devil's advocate.
No,
So one of us, Gina and I, like to do good cop, bad cop. So I guess I'm the bad cop today.
Go ahead.
Through life, right? You understand that with domestic violence, sometimes, not all the time, not in your situation, but sometimes, especially at that age, I feel like couples fight. So it's not like the man hit the woman. Sometimes like women know how to like push those buttons, right? To where sometimes young men don't know how to control their emotions, so they act out in violence rather than know how to use their words. Was that something that happened? Like, would you call him out his name? Would you say something about his mother? Would you push buttons that you know would get him there for him to react? Or was it just him saying, hey, I'm coming home, I'm drunk, and I'm mad at the world because my boss fired me, so I'm going to take it out on my girl?
So while you're playing devil's advocate, we all learn in kindergarten that there's consequences to our actions and that we all have control over our own bodies. And so it doesn't matter if I call you out your name or if I tell you that you are a dumb ass or that you suck at life or you're no good, you're never going to amount to anything. That doesn't give you the right to put your hands on me. It doesn't give you the right to choke me until I pass out and see ghosts. Like it doesn't, I don't care what I did. I don't care what anybody else has done. If you feel the need to put your hands on somebody, you need to fucking walk out the door. You don't need to do it. It's not a requirement to make yourself feel better. Leave. You have, just like I had the will, I had the right to leave and I had the power to leave at any point. So did he. Just like I had the power to leave at any point, he had the power to not put his hands on me. So
I raise a glass to that. Cheers to that.
Glass. And I was just playing devil's advocate for the. Listen.
Yeah.
For the audience. So what we do and what devil's advocate mean, right? Quote with quotations mean that this is the show course perspectives, right? So there's different perspectives. So you have your perspective from a woman, from a survivor, from a champion. Gina have her perspective from a woman. I have my perspective from a man. So there's audience in our audience. There's different perspectives. So there's probably someone out there like, hey, what about this? And that's where that devil's advocate question.
And nothing that you ask me, devil's advocate or not, isn't something either I've thought about myself or have already been asked many times, because this July is 10 years since I left. So I've been through a lot of it.
No, and we exactly appreciate you shedding the light on those questions too, because that's one of the reasons we wanted to have you here is these questions that people have that they're afraid to ask or that they don't ask or that they carry on thinking in ignorance. It's important for them to hear the truth and to understand the intricacies of that. What you were saying kind of reminds me of like the rape culture that we have in, well, many places, but America, which is essentially like, it doesn't matter what a woman is wearing. If you're provoked, if you're turned on, doesn't matter. Yeah. You don't have right to have sex with her unless she consents. She can be walking naked down the street.
Naked.
And it doesn't matter if she's your wife. It doesn't matter if she's your girlfriend. It doesn't matter if you've had sex with her before. It doesn't matter if she says no. No means no. It doesn't matter what she has on. It doesn't matter what she said 5 minutes ago, 5 seconds ago. If she tells you no, that means you need to stop. You need to back up and you need to move the fuck on.
Move on. So in this chaotic relationship of yours, and now that he introduced violence into your relationship, did you find yourself ever putting your hands on him and provoking him?
In defense of myself, yes.
No, not in defense. I'm not saying defense. I hope you were defending yourself. Fuck him up. But I'm saying like, did he create a new standard that y'all live by is what I'm asking.
No, I never put my hands on him initiating violence. I did put my hands on him to protect myself or to fend him off, but I never. Now, he did have me act out my character a couple times with the mental games and all that. I tried. If you've ever tried to key a 1987 Box Chevy Caprice, that bad boy is a tank. It cannot be keyed. Believe me, I know. I've tried.
So you got a little like. Was that a act to like protect yourself, like, hey, you did this?
No, I was pissed the fuck off and he was playing games and that was my childish mentality doing that. I've learned to do better. You know better, you do better. But then that was my immediate, because I knew his car was his baby. Da, 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 da. So that was the way that I could hurt him without actually putting myself in direct danger.
Got you.
Because you can't key an 87 Chevy. That thing's a tank, just so y'all know. You don't make them like that anymore.
Learning so much. Okay, so he's in therapy. You're living 2 blocks away. Things are getting better in your eyes. You know, he's not as violent as frequently anymore.
Yeah. So, the summer before we broke up, we had gone on vacation for my birthday. His dad didn't know that we were back together any of this time. I'm sure he probably had his suspicions, but he didn't actually know that we were together, because keep in mind, this whole time he was going through a court case and was having to mind his P's and Q's.
What year is this?
We broke up in 2011. So this was like 2010, 2009 in there. Because that was all going on. He had to do the therapy. He had to pay the fine. He had to do, and the fine was not a little chump change. It was like a couple $1,000 that he had to pay for. So his record wasn't expunged like immediately, because he had to get the money to pay for that expungement.
Hold on, wait. So the expungement was if he completed the program from the first charge, but then the second time he was charged with a felony. So that
they wrapped it all into the same thing.
So he never got charged with the felony. Did they drop it?
He did get charged with the felony, but they didn't. He was charged with it. They never convicted him of it, because he stayed in this program. And if he completed that program, then they were not going to convict him. Like, they weren't going to take him to court to convict him and make him have a record.
So they was going to throw out the first case of misdemeanor and the felony.
Yes.
Because of you.
Yes.
Got you.
I will say, if you run his name right now, he still has eluding arrest on his record. Gotcha. They did not expunge that, but they did expunge the domestic violence charges.
Got you.
That 4 years, is that right? That you were in that relationship 4 or 5 years?
4.5 years.
Wow. Okay. What kind of led to the final breakup then?
So June of 2011 was the last time he put his hands on me. He choked me until I lost consciousness. It happened on a Friday. He actually left fingerprints on my neck. I had a necklace that he had bought me on. He left marks on my neck from the necklace. The marks were still there when I went to work on Monday. And I later found out that my boss at the time just thought they were hickeys. So she didn't say anything, because I had tried to cover them up, but can't hide those. So my boss at the time apparently just thought that I had hickeys. So she didn't say anything to me. And that kind of set into motion me leaving, because when I lost, and this will make me cry, when I lost consciousness that time, I saw 2 little children watching us. And I did not want my children to grow up watching that. And we were talking about getting married, and we were talking about having children at that point. And so I just couldn't. I had to get out before my kids were born, because I couldn't let them grow up like that. And saw a little boy and a little girl watching us. And that's what put it into motion that I needed to leave. I went on vacation with my father and his wife and my siblings that summer. He took me to the train station to leave. Was a complete asshole. The entire week that I was gone, because I was gone, and how dare I go on vacation and and I came home, and I don't even remember what we got into a fight about when I got home. I honestly don't remember. I think I blocked it out. But I was done. And we had been through this cycle. It takes an average of 7 times for a domestic violence victim to leave her abuser. So there's a cycle. You go through something explosive, causes you to leave, and then he begs you back and threatens suicide or buys you flowers, cries, I'm going to change, I'm going to do better. And then you get back together and you go through a honeymoon phase, and then you repeat it all over again. And so we had been through this a couple times. So I don't think he didn't believe me. He didn't believe that I was done. And like I said, we lived 2 blocks away from each other. He had a key to my house. My landlord at the time was not willing to change my locks right away. So I woke up to him in my home, standing over me while I was sleeping, going through my cell phone. I came home from work one night and was sitting in my driveway sending a text message, and got out of my car, not realizing, because I was parked with my back facing the road, with my back to the road. So I didn't realize that he had driven by, and he had busted a U-turn and came back. So as I was walking up to my mailbox, he tapped me on the back of my leg with his car to get my attention. And it took me a solid 30 minutes to get him to leave. Oh, well, I have a date with this girl this weekend, and she wants to make sure that we're done before we have sex, and please don't make me do this. And I'm like, do what you want. I'm done. Like, I'm done. I don't care.
He's still trying to play those mind games with you.
Oh yeah. He was still, oh, well, we don't throw this away. I was going to order your engagement ring because my birthday was coming up. My birthday is August 11th. We broke up about 2.5, 3 weeks before my birthday. So, I was going to propose for your birthday and blah, blah. We've put in so much time. Don't do this to us. I blocked his number. So I ended up getting emails. I had to let my employer know because I had worked at my job at the time for like 2 years at that point. Mm-hmm. They had met him. He had been up there for lunch, whatever. And so they would have thought nothing of him coming in the front door and asking to see me, and they would have just called me down. Mm-hmm. So I had to let my boss know. And when I told her, she looked at me and she was like, Aimee, were those bruises on your neck a couple weeks ago, or were those hickeys? And I was like, no, those were bruises. He had choked me till I passed out. And she was like, oh my God, I am so sorry. I should have said something. I should have done something. I should have told you that I'm like, there was nothing anybody could do until I was ready to be done. I had to get to that point in order for it to stick. Believe me, my best friends tried. My dad tried. My best friend's mom, who's like my mom, rest her soul, she is in heaven now, tried. And I truly believe that I only made it through because I had a praying mother and I had praying friends who stood by me no matter what. Because he scared off a lot of people. He threatened to slash a lot of tires. He threatened to stalk a lot of people and make people's lives living hell. But I've got 3 girls who stood by me no matter what and refused to be scared off. And I know they saved my life. They got me through a lot of it because I don't think I would have made it. So, it was just a vicious cycle. And so he was used to that cycle and he didn't think I was going to stick to it. So for about 6 weeks after I ended the relationship, he still stalked me, called my job. I had to let my employer know that if he came in the front door, they were to call 911. They were not to send me down to the front desk. People walked me out to my car for the longest time. It was a really scary time. My friends learned very quickly what our escape plans were. And to this day, we still practice them. I don't live where my abuser lives any longer, but I do go home frequently to visit. And so this past March, I went home to help my best friend move into her new home. And she was actually the one that had cleaned up my face that time that he busted my lip. And so she knows, if anybody knows, she knows what goes on in my head. And I do have PTSD thanks to this situation. So when I'm home, my alert is a lot more heightened. I'm always looking, always trying to catch him before he catches me kind of thing. So we went out to dinner after we moved all her stuff, and I have to sit facing the door. And my leg was going 90 miles a minute. My anxiety was insane. And she was sitting next to me. She's like, it's okay. It's okay. But I kept having
last year.
Yeah, this was last year.
Oh man.
So I told the table, I was like, just so you guys know, if I get up and leave in the middle of dinner, I need y'all to just take care of my check. I'll cash app you later because I was terrified he was going to walk through the door. And there's actually only been one instance where I almost ran into him. It was a few years ago. It was like 2016, 2017. I went home for my birthday and we went out to dinner and we were going to a bar. And my best guy friend, DeHaven, who I actually met through my abuser, and I got him in the breakup. He gave me away at my wedding to my ex-husband. He's an amazing guy.
Oh wow! So when you broke up with your abuser, he was like, yo, I'm gonna ride with you. Like, I'm your friend. So he
initially, he actually thought I was a bitch when he first met me.
Yeah.
Because I had such a standoffish appearance because of what was going on. And then he realized she's not that bad. He's actually become one of my best friends. But he was with us. It was a group of girls and him. And, all the girls, we got to go to the bathroom together. So we all went to the bathroom and he went to the bar that was at the back of this club that we were at outside. And he got a beer, and as he turned around from the bar, he heard, "Yo, David." And he was like, "Oh."
He was like, no way.
Yeah. And so he talked to him really quickly, and he's like, "All right, man, well, I got to go meet up with my friends. I'll see you later." And he grabbed Ashley. Ashley was the first one that got to him, and he grabbed her and he was like, "He's here." And she was like, "Fuck, we got to get her out of here." And so they were like, "You know what? The music here sucks. Let's go somewhere else." So they
didn't even tell you.
No. Well, so we get out of the club. Yes, they are very good friends. So we get out of the club, and DeHaven was like, "Man, I can't believe he was there." And I was like, "Who was there? What? Who was there?" And Ashley popped him on the arm, and she was like, "Dude, I wasn't going to tell her till tomorrow." And he was like, "Oh, my bad." And I was like, "Wait, he was there?" And they were like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you guys. You executed the plan perfectly."
Wow, that stuck to the script.
Yeah, they knew.
Yo, cheers to the homies. Yo, we got to do a cheers to the homies. Y'all seeing this? Cheers to you, you heard?
Yeah, they're the best. So, but that's the only time I've even come close to running into him. I make sure to try to stay away.
But in the world of like social media, like he doesn't try
He's
to
blocked.
Like, on everything.
On everything.
So he never tried to make fake accounts to try to reach out and anything.
If he does, he hasn't reached out to me. If he does, it hasn't been brought to my attention. But I block him the instant I get any. So like I joined Instagram I didn't really start using Instagram until like right after we broke up. So, well, actually I was pregnant with my daughter. So we were broken up, and I blocked him. Mm-hmm. Like as soon as I get anything, I search his name and I block him, because even with Facebook, even if somebody has you blocked, you can still search for them and you can block them. So that way, even if he tried to unblock me or something, he would still be blocked.
There's not a chance. Yeah, no, that's very, very smart. Make yourself hard to find. Yeah. One of the questions that I think a lot of people have is, how do you handle thinking about the women that he dated after you? Like, do you feel responsible if they are going through the abuse that you didn't press charges, or like how do you feel about that? And
so like I said, we went to high school together. We still have a lot of mutual friends, and I am very vocal. And it's not hard to figure out who I'm talking about. If you went to high school with us, it's not hard to figure it out, because there was only one person that I dated after high school who went to high school with me. So I've put it out there. If they know who he's dating, and, maybe he's changed, maybe he's different. Do I believe it? No, but it could happen, so I more so I actually have reached out to girls he had dated prior to me and asked them if he was abusive with them. And apparently he was not. There was like some control, weird controlling kind of things that were mentioned, but it wasn't to the scale that I went through. So I do wonder about the girls after me, but I also know that if that was to happen and they were to reach out and they needed a witness, I would be happy to testify.
Hold on. So let's go back to that. Let's rewind what you just said. How did that make you feel that the girls that dated him around the time, like right before you dated him, or around the time you dated him or you knew him, that he didn't abuse them, but he abused you? Well, how did that make you feel?
I actually haven't really thought that much about it, because I can't change it. So what happened. And
no, what I mean, so let me reiterate the question. What I mean is, like, do you, in hearing that, do you feel like, do you take onus, like, hey, maybe it was me, and because he didn't do it to anyone else, so was it?
I just don't think he had the capability. When he dated those people, he didn't have a car. He lived at home with his parents. He didn't have a job.
His power was limited.
So what he could do and what he had access to was limited. I literally picked him up from his house in the middle of the night with 2 totes and a backpack full of his stuff and moved him into my house.
Gotcha.
So he had access to my car. He lived with me. So it was a completely different situation. So it's like comparing apples and oranges. There's not very many similarities because he didn't have the same ability to do that like he did with me.
Awesome. I'm glad you're not wearing that coat. So that's good. Appreciate that.
I'm curious. I know that with some abuse situations that there is a correlation between domestic abuse and addiction, and domestic abuse and the abuser being a survivor themselves as well. Are there any correlations in your case, do you feel, with your abuser?
I have my suspicions, but I don't think from my knowledge, there was no drug use done. Like I said, he was trying to become a cop. So that was not something that he did to my knowledge. As for being a survivor or being exposed to it in other ways, like I said, I have my suspicions, but that's all I'll say because it involves other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we are here to speak your story, not theirs. Yeah. And I think it's important for you to hold your power there too. So that's amazing.
I guess what I would ask is, now that you experienced that, you've been married, you had children, and now you're an advocate and a champion, what would you tell the young Aimee that's 18, 19, 20 years old that's going through that shit right now and looking at the show? What would you tell her?
It'll all be worth it. I say this all the time, and it'll make me cry. I'll live that life all over again. I will endure everything I endured as long as I end up being Alina and Andrew's mom again. Because if I had lived my life any different, if I had ended things any sooner, if I hadn't have met their father, even though he and I are divorcing and we're not together, I wouldn't live anything in my life differently because I always want to end up being my daughter and my son's mom. I was pregnant with my daughter on the 1-year anniversary of leaving him. And I was pregnant with my son. I left him in July 2011, and my daughter was born in January of 2013. And my son was born in May of 2015. So within 4 years of leaving him, I had both of the children who had shown themselves to me the last time he choked me. And I would not ever want to be anybody else's mom. So I wouldn't change anything. I would just tell myself that it gets better. Even though, like I said, I deal with the PTSD and life hasn't been a bundle of, butterflies and roses, but nobody's life is. And there was a reason that I went through what I went through. And that's why I do these things. That's why I talk to people. That's why I am so vocal about what I went through, because I want to help prevent somebody else going through it or give somebody else the strength to get out of it. I've helped over 8 women escape, coordinated their escapes in the last 2 years and some change. I've connected countless others with resources and safety planning. And I spoke for the South Carolina Attorney General in September of 2019 at a press conference. I've been interviewed by all my local news stations. I'm very, very vocal about what I went through, and letting people know that there's help. I get counseling through Hopeful Horizons, which is a local shelter in the Beaufort, South Carolina area. That's amazing. They're bar none to a lot of the shelters that I've encountered. They offer legal services, shelter, counseling.
Wait, to this day, you still get counseling and help through them, resources for what happened to you in 2011?
I actually didn't initiate counseling until it'll, I guess, be 3 years ago this summer. Because I put a Band-Aid on it and I smiled through it, and it's going to be okay. It's going to be great. We're going to be okay, And then you have 2 children and you go through a lot of stressors. And I have ADHD. And at that point 3 years ago, I knew something wasn't right. My medications weren't right. I needed more help than what I could get right then. And I talked to my primary care doctor, and she was like, okay, well, this isn't in my scope. So let me send your referral out. Get an evaluation, we'll go from there. And so she sent me for I was scared that I was bipolar. I was scared that I had a personality disorder. I was scared that there was something wrong with me more it didn't even dawn on me that it was likely PTSD, that it was, PTSD had been tossed around.
Yeah.
It had mentioned lightly here and there, but it wasn't something. And so I saw the therapist and did my evaluation. She's like, Aimee, you're not crazy. You're not bipolar. You don't have personality disorder. If you had personality disorder, the first thing out of your mouth when you started seeing me would not have been, I don't want to fuck my kids up.
So initially, when you started counseling, you didn't make the correlation between what happened to you back in 09 to 2007 to 2011. You didn't make the correlation that, hey, what's going on 2 years after that has to do with that. Because you mentioned you thought you had bipolar or something else.
Yeah, I didn't realize that PTSD could play such a large part. A lot of people, if you're anything like me, when you think PTSD, people still think it's a soldier's disorder.
Okay.
When you tell
I'm a soldier and I got PTSD. Shout out to the soldiers.
Yeah.
Hey,
I'm not a soldier and I have PTSD. It manifests in so many different ways for so many different people.
It does. And so a lot of people, but when the layman, when civilians think, because my dad's a Navy veteran, I have a lot of military family and friends, but when people who aren't, and that's what they automatically think of is, oh, that's you went to war.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of.
You kind of went to war.
Yeah.
Or they think, oh, do you have flashbacks? Do you because on TV they play the helicopter flashbacks and stuff. And I'm like,
that can be for some people, but
and it can be, but that's not what I deal with. It's more heightened vigilance, and I'm very hyper aware, especially when I'm very stressed out. I am always planning. I always have a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There is never not a plan in place. I don't like surprises. So there's a lot that goes into it. And I have ADHD. So I didn't realize that PTSD and ADHD can be comorbid and they can affect each other. And I didn't realize that my anxiety and depression could be affected. I didn't realize that all this stuff tied in together. And
then you have kids. So you're dealing with postpartum probably on top of that too, which is for any, even just average woman is a difficult thing to deal with.
Exactly. And so, I went through all that. I went through the evaluation, and she was like, Aimee, you just have some pretty severe PTSD that is not being controlled. And she was like, I just want to give you props because I'm very surprised that you're not self-medicating right now, because a lot of people who've been through what you've been through would be like that. In order to get through their day, they would be drinking or they would be doing drugs because that's what would give them relief. That's the only. So she's like, I give you props for that. And I was like, yeah, good. Because addiction runs in my family. I didn't want,
Absolutely.
I avoided that as much as I could.
So how did the situation that you encountered affect future relationship, more importantly, your marriage? Or did it?
Oh yeah, it did. The fact that I had PTSD that was undiagnosed and uncontrolled. So when I met my ex-husband, I was medicated. I was on antidepressant and I was on ADHD medicine. Life was golden. When I found out I was pregnant, we got pregnant very quickly. My daughter was not planned. And the first thing out of my best guy friend, DeHaven's mouth, when he found out I was pregnant was, I'm going to pray for your ex. I'm going to pray for her dad because he doesn't know you unmedicated. I do. I love you no matter what. But
and you went off of the medication for the pregnancy?
I had to.
Wow.
Yeah. So for the majority of our relationship, my ex didn't have me medicated. And so, because then, I did get medicated, finally got medicated after our daughter, and then got pregnant with our son. Yeah. And so I had to get unmedicated, and then I nursed my son for 18 months and I couldn't. Yeah. So, and by the time my son we split about a month after my son turned 1. So I went back on medication around 18 months after my son was born. And my ex has made the comment, God, I wish you'd been medicated before we split up. Things might have been able to be different. Yeah. Because my brain works. And it's not my fault that I have a chemical imbalance. I'm doing everything I can to rectify that and to make it work normally, but it is what it is. And so, I've learned a lot through counseling and through therapy and through educating myself and reading different things and talking to different people. And, I've learned a lot about how my brain works and about my triggers and how to get healthy. And I'm doing everything I can to improve that and to get better through that.
Yeah, I love that. You're taking the personal responsibility to
don't
take control of your life.
I don't want to fuck my kids. That is always my driving goal. I want my children to need as little therapy when they leave my home as possible.
But you know what? So let's go to that. And Gina and I are coaches. We're not therapists, but we always push like self-love and making sure that you take care of yourself, either through therapy, coaching, or what have you. So even though you say you don't want you want your children to experience as less therapy as possible, I feel like I don't want to downplay the importance of going to see a therapist.
I'm a big proponent of therapy. I don't want them to need therapy because
yeah.
I don't want my children to carry my baggage.
That's a fair distinction.
I don't want my children to carry my baggage. And so I'm not a perfect mother by any means. I snap, I yell, I'm your typical mom, but I try my best to apologize to my kids when I know that I did something, when I know I may have reacted out of character, or I may have yelled when I shouldn't have, or I made a snap judgment that was actually not right. They were telling the truth. I admit my wrongs to my children because I want my children to know, one, that I'm human, and two, that we make mistakes. And when we make mistakes, we have to apologize for them and make them right.
Yeah.
So
that's the important part right there.
Yeah,
exactly what you
Gina,
just said.
I knew you were going to say that. Gina and I just recently had a conversation, and she's a big advocate about that. She's okay with mistakes, but she wanted to make sure that people own their mistakes so that they're able to do better in the future. So I knew you were going to say something.
That we're all human. We all make mistakes, and as if you acknowledge them and you move forward with the best effort that you can to do better, that makes all the difference. Saying like, oh, I'm human, or this is my mistake, or whatever, and then just being like, that's how I am, like, I'm crazy. Like, no, that's not okay. You need to own that, and you need to work on that and get resources, whatever you need. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing. Just want to point out too that one of the phrases that a lot of people use is, you are strong because of what you've gone through, or what you've gone through has made you who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I take issue with that phrase because I feel like that gives honor to the person who has abused you, who has put you through some shit. So when I look at you, I think you are strong despite what you have gone through. It is your strength that led you through being able to survive that situation, and to be able to come out of that situation, and to be able to raise proudly your children with love. And the fact that your love too has remained through these situations is inspiring and beautiful. And I appreciate your vulnerability and for sharing your story with us.
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy to have been here. Thank you for letting me share my story and raise awareness and talk about it and get that out there. Every interview that I do, every conversation that I have is geared towards helping at least one person. And as long as I can help one person avoid what I went through because they see the signs before they get into it, or have this to find their strength, because they're strong. They just don't realize that they're as strong as they are. So for them to find their strength so that they can leave and leave safely, that's why I do this. My kids know that there was somebody before their dad who is not very nice to mommy, and they go to they go to events with me, and they have to know, there's times where I've got to go pick up donations because there's a woman that I'm helping, and I've got other people who've donated supplies or donated money. And so plans have to change. And so it's gotten to the point where my kids are just like, so we have to go, we're going to help somebody because somebody was mean to them. Right, Mom? Yes. We're going to help somebody because somebody was mean to them. Because I want my children to grow up. I don't want my daughter to end up in the same situation I was in. I don't want my son to end up in the same situation I was in. And I don't want them to be the abusers either. So I'm trying to teach them from a young age that this is not healthy and what is healthy.
That's awesome. So earlier you mentioned one 1 in 3 women experience domestic violence. What is the statistics for men? Because it's not only women that's going through that, correct?
1 in 7.
1 in 7.
And again, that's not an accurate statistic because men are less likely to report, and men are also, like I said, a lot of people still think that domestic violence is just physical violence. They don't take into account the other things. So it's not an accurate number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, both those numbers are way higher than they should be. And I love that you're working to help bring them to as close to 0 as possible.
Yeah, and just one thing I want to touch on before we end this for tonight is with COVID-19 and the pandemic going on right now, domestic violence is greatly on the rise. Because victims are stuck at home with their abusers. More people are working from home, so it's harder to get away. It's harder to call for help.
You don't have that break.
Yeah, you don't have a break. It's hard, and it's harder to call for help. It's harder to make that call to a shelter and get help getting out. And then at the same time, it's also hard to find a shelter that has space or that is taking people, because I know Hopeful Horizons for a while had shut down, not taking people, but they weren't taking anybody into their shelter. They had to displace everybody into other accommodations because they couldn't have everybody in that close quarters when everything first started. I'm not sure if they're back in the shelter yet or not, but they were still trying to make accommodations. I mean, I just had a woman who unfortunately couldn't utilize Hopeful Horizons because they didn't have space. She was able to find shelter at another shelter, but they have to turn people away, and they count on donations from, people like me, from grants, from the government, everything, to keep running and to be able to do those things. So it's just, I really want to point out that is something that is, there's a New York Times article that is out there that I was reading earlier today, calling domestic violence the pandemic within the pandemic, because numbers are so much on the rise right now. And it's harder to see the signs. It's harder to ask for help. It's harder for people outside of your home to know what's going on because we're not really leaving our homes as much. Yeah. And what you post on social media is literally just a little square of what's actually going on. And it could be hell around you, but you're smiling. So, it's just really important that we're checking in with our loved ones and, reaching out to our friends and making sure, hey, just checking in, want to make sure you're okay. Hadn't heard from you in a while, whatever. But also know that you don't have to be available 24/7. So if you're in a relationship with somebody and they're working from home, 10 hours away and you're working from home, and they think that they can call you 24/7 and you have to answer your phone because you're at home. You're not an actual worker. No, you don't. Mm-hmm. You can still treat it like you're at work. You don't have to be available 24/7. You don't have to, be plugged into everything just because you're working from home. And even though it's harder to find resources right now, don't let that discourage you. There are people who will help you. There are people who want to help you. All you have to do is ask and let it be known that you need the help. It might not happen immediately. It might take some planning behind the scenes. But I'm not one to shy away from a challenge. So I've gotten women across the country. So I got one woman this past December was a year ago. I got her from Savannah to California before her abuser realized she was gone. So she put a post up in a local moms group asking for help at 6:00 in the morning. And by 9:00 that morning, I had somebody arranged to pick her up. And by 5:00 that afternoon, when I got off work, I had over $800 raised to buy her a bus ticket and a disposable cell phone. We had clothes donated. She was pregnant. He had withheld her toiletries, so she wasn't able to take care of herself appropriately. So, I picked her up, fed her, got her on a bus the next morning. And before he realized she was gone, she was already halfway across the country. He had left for a short little work-related trip and left her unattended. And she was able to use that little window to get out. And she had bumps across the way, but have a hard time asking for help for myself, but I don't have a hard time asking for help for other people. So I put the call out, and I mean, there's people who at every bump, every roadblock that we encountered, we were able to get through because somebody was willing to help.
Beautiful.
And all you need to do is ask. There's so many people that will help you, and there's so many resources. If you're in the Beaufort County area, Bluffton, Hilton Head, that area, Colleton County, Hopeful Horizons services a wide range of places here in Savannah. It's a safe shelter, and there's resources everywhere. And my inbox is always open to people, even if I don't know you. If you need support, or if you have questions, or if you need to find resources, I'm always available to help whoever needs it.
Cheers to that. That was absolutely beautiful. I love the work you're doing.
It reassures me. You know, you get to a point where you're like, people suck. Like, you know, you deal with so much drama, and you deal with you see so much hate in the world, and so much hate in the news, and just so much negativity. And then a situation like this will pop up, and I have a woman that I need to help, and the outpouring of support will blow my mind. It'll be like, okay, so my faith in humanity is restored for another day. It'll probably wear out in a couple weeks, but
but you know what? If that faith in humanity starts to wear out, I know this great show on YouTube called Perspective, where there's really inspirational and beautiful people that they're just their light to the world. So I recommend you check it out.
I agree. They have a great show.
So I have a question before we wrap this up.
Yeah.
That your faith in people sometimes change due to like the help that you receive. How is your faith in men right now, based on what?
What a loaded question.
That's a very loaded question. I don't hold what I've been through against anybody I have yet to meet, if that makes any sense. So,
are you on the radar? Like is your bullshit meter or your red flag
my bullshit meter
like,
is very fine tuned right now, and there's a very low tolerance for it. So, and I will.
So if he yelled because dinner's not ready, you like, oh, gotta go.
No, come on now.
I feel like the experience helps you tune even better to know what that is.
Tolerance for the games, and I have, and there are a lot of games, and this would be a whole nother show that I would be happy to talk about. It has what I've been through hasn't tainted our relationship. It's just fine tuned my expectations and my tolerance for things. So I have a lower bullshit tolerance than I probably would have had I not gone through this stuff. I actually see red flags. And I think people get that confused with having too high of standards and having a red flag meter, because my standards are not too high. I just don't tolerate bullshit, and I don't tolerate games, and I don't tolerate lying, and I don't tolerate it. And so if I catch you in it, and I have a very good intuition, and so my gut has never steered me wrong, ever. And so if I ask you a question and I already know the answer, so you might as well just be honest with me, because it's not going to work in your favor. I mean, there's the joke. I tell you, I'm hyper vigilant. There's, that you see those memes on Facebook and Instagram. Every girl group has that one FBI best friend. I'm that FBI best friend.
Yep.
I know how to find everything out. And if I need to, I will. I don't want to do that, but don't put me in that situation to use those skills.
Don't push me. Yeah.
And honestly, I feel like that bullshit meter saves a lot of time in the dating world, because you're just like, oh, I already know what the riffraff is. I already know the games you're trying to play. Next, please. I'm not even going to waste my time with that.
Exactly. And I feel like if we focus more on the red flags and on what a healthy relationship looks like younger. So one of my biggest pet peeves with kids is, when a little boy is mean to a little girl, and people are like, oh, it's just because he likes you. No. So, somebody tried to say that to my daughter one day at school when she was in pre-K kindergarten. I was like, no, it's because he's rude and needs to learn boundaries. No, we don't play that. That's not, that sets kids up to think if a man is mean to me, that means he likes me. So I need to just keep doing it. No, that's not what we're doing. We're not doing that.
That's good. And that's great parenting, because I go back to what you said originally when you was in school, that you lacked that education that we all have. Like, it was more so geared towards not getting pregnant. It's instead of establishing healthy relationships. So,
and there's so much on our teachers right now, that while I would love to say that the solution would be for there to be a class or a section in a class that covers this, there's already a ton on our teachers. Our teachers are already overworked and underpaid. And
they need to hire life coaches.
That, or, parents could have these conversations, or there could be kid shows. I mean, put a show on Netflix talking about it with cute music and cartoons, and give them an underlying message that love shouldn't hurt. You shouldn't cry over a boy or a girl. And if they make you
shouldn't
cry,
hurt other people to get their attention or to show that you have an emotion. Yeah. Having those, like you said, the healthy way to express your emotions and learning that early on.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that you're doing that. Yeah.
Well, Aimee, this has been amazing. Thank you for your bravery. You are an amazing woman. You are a champion. So before we go to our thing of the week, I would like to cheers to Aimee and everything the gems that you dropped on us today. We really appreciate it. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you again for joining us.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Right now, this is my favorite part of the show. I had to do it, Gina. This is our thing of the week. Aimee, during our thing of the week, this is when we provide our guests with something that inspired us, rather than it be a book or a quote or something that we experienced, so they can hold on to until we see them again next week. So without further ado, my thing of the week is this. I get it, people. Shit happens. However, you have to just smile, shrug your shoulders, and move on. Your current problems and issues are not the worst you ever experienced. Think about it. So just remind yourself that you would get past this problem or issue just like you got past the last one. Coach Phoenix, role model mindset. Coach Gina?
That's true. We've all survived a lot of bullshit, and I think there's a lot more bullshit coming down the road, but we've got this. And I think pulling in the support like Aimee has, and reaching out to your support system and therapy and everything just helps you get through that all the more. Thank you for sharing that, Phoenix. So my thing of the week is this. Compassion is built on the ability to relate to others. The phrase, you, like me, is the cornerstone of compassion. When we view people within that context, it helps us to build empathy. You, like me, struggled at math in school. You, like me, like watching sports with your friends. To build compassion for yourself, consider the phrase, I, like others. I, like others, deserve a break. I, like others, need help sometimes. Whatever you're facing, you're not alone. There are others who have gone through it. There are others who can relate to you. So just remember, you deserve what you feel other people deserve as well.
That's amazing. That's greatly put, and that's a great way to end this show. So with that, we're going to say goodbye. Thank you, Aimee, for your courageous story, being a survivor, being a champion. Thank you for joining us as Perspective. This is Toast with the Coaches, Coach Gina, Coach Phoenix. Aimee, we appreciate you. Audience, subscribe, tell a friend and tell a friend. Thank you, and we out. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.